My name is Emma, I'm 26 years old, and I'm currently an internal medicine physician. Looking back on my life, I can't forget the turbulent years of my childhood. Before my mother passed away, my life felt perfect. We lived in a cozy little house in the suburbs of Seattle, Washington. My parents were loving and attentive. My mother, Susan, was an elementary school teacher who brought joy and laughter into our home. I hadn't anticipated this entirely, as I was afraid it would make my mother mad. Every night before bed, she would tell me colorful stories, while my father, Robert, a repair mechanic, spent weekends playing with me in the yard or teaching me how to fix small things around the house. Those early years of my childhood were filled with happiness. I can vividly remember the mornings when my mom would make crispy toast and warm milk for breakfast, or the afternoons my dad would take me to the park to swing and watch the ducks swim in the pond. We weren't wealthy, but love and warmth filled every corner of our little home. I truly believed I was the luckiest girl in the world to have such a perfect family. But everything changed when I was 8 years old. My mother tragically passed away in a car accident on her way home from school. Her death was a devastating shock. I couldn't understand how someone as gentle and loving as my mom could be gone forever. After the funeral, our once lively house fell eerily silent. I often sat alone in my room, clutching the teddy bear my mother had given me, trying to find comfort in the memories of her love. My father, who had once been my rock, also changed completely after my mom's passing. He seemed to lose the energy and vibrancy that had defined him. The playful weekends we used to share disappeared, replaced by long afternoons of him sitting quietly in his worn armchair, staring blankly into space. I knew he was grieving, but as a child I needed comfort and protection too. Yet my father no longer had the strength to be there for me, as he once was. Just months after my mother's funeral, my father unexpectedly announced that he had met someone new and wanted her to move in with us. I still remember that day vividly. When he brought her home, I felt like my world was crumbling all over again. Her name was Linda. A tall woman with neatly tied brown hair. Unlike my mother's warmth and kindness, Linda had a cold and distant demeanor. She smiled at me, but it was a smile that didn't feel comforting. "Just now," I said, addressing the lady working behind me. "Emma, this is Linda. She'll be living with us from now on," my father said, his tone leaving no room for protest. I could sense the shift in our home's atmosphere the moment Linda arrived. The walls that once held so much love and laughter now felt colder. Linda made no effort to bond with me or get to know me. On the contrary, she treated me like an unwelcome guest in my own home. Her comments often carried a tone of sarcasm or disdain, making me feel like an outsider. When I tried to express my discomfort with Linda to my father, he simply shook his head and said, "Emma, you need to learn to accept her. She's trying to be a part of our family." But I didn't feel like Linda wanted to be part of my family. She never sat down to talk to me or ask me how I was doing. Instead, she acted as though my presence was a burden. Linda's coldness and my father's indifference pushed me further into isolation. I stopped sharing my feelings or thoughts with anyone in that house. With each passing day I realized I had lost not just my mother, but also the loving family I once had. The house that had once been my safe haven now felt like a place of painful memories. A temporary shelter filled with echoes of the past, that broke my heart every time I thought about them. Linda's arrival plunged my life into a series of miserable days I had never imagined. From the moment she stepped into our home, I felt the cold distance in every word and gesture directed toward me. At first I tried to adapt, to find a semblance of family with her, but all my efforts were in vain. Linda made no attempt to bond with me. Instead, she looked at me as if I were an unwanted presence. An obstacle in the new life she was building with my father. Linda's actions started subtly, so much so that I wasn't sure if I was overthinking things. She began with small criticisms. "Emma, don't leave dirty dishes in the sink. Don't you realize how inconsiderate that is?" she'd say in a cold voice, her sharp gaze leaving me speechless. I'd stay silent, questioning whether I had really done something wrong. But soon, her behavior escalated. One day, I discovered that my favorite jacket had shrunk and faded after being washed. When I asked Linda about it, she shrugged and replied indifferently. Maybe you should learn how to take better care of your things. Besides, you shouldn't be wearing something that old anyway. I tried talking to my father about what was happening, hoping he would stand by me and protect me like he once had. But every time I brought it up, he brushed it aside. Emma, you need to understand that Linda is trying to fit into our family. You can't keep living in the past, he said, his words cutting me like a knife. It was as if he wasn't the father I had once loved and trusted. He sided with Linda, not me, leaving me feeling abandoned in my own home. Linda's abuse didn't stop at words. Over time, her hostility became more overt, through small but malicious acts. Once, while I was sitting on the couch reading, Linda entered the room without a word. She walked past me, then suddenly leaned down and pinched my arm hard. I flinched, startled and in pain, but when I looked up, she gave me a smirking, triumphant smile. It was just an accident. You're too sensitive, she said when I confronted her. I began avoiding Linda as much as possible. Every step I took in the house felt like a mental battle. I learned to quietly slip out of the room if she was in the kitchen, or wait until she left before grabbing something from the fridge. But even that wasn't enough to escape her control. Once, while I was working on homework at my desk, Linda entered my room uninvited. She tugged at my hair just enough to hurt and frighten me. You should study harder if you don't want to end up a failure, she said before walking out, leaving me stunned and angry. I tried again to speak with my father, but his response was the same. Emma, you really need to stop this. Linda is doing everything she can to make you comfortable, and you're just looking for reasons to complain. You can't keep fighting her like this. His words made me feel like I was shouting into a void where no one could hear or care about me. The loneliness weighed heavier on me with each passing day. I no longer had anywhere to retreat. Even my room, once my safe haven, no longer felt secure. Linda frequently invaded my space, rummaging through my belongings, from clothes to books. It was as if she was determined to erase any trace of me from the house. At school I became quieter, retreating into myself. I didn't want anyone to know what was happening at home. I feared that if I spoke up, Linda would retaliate, and my father wouldn't believe me anyway. But my silence didn't escape the notice of my literature teacher, Ms. Brown. One day, as I handed in an assignment, she noticed the bruise on my wrist. Emma, what happened? She asked, her eyes filled with concern. I quickly pulled my sleeve down, forcing a smile as I lied. It's nothing, just a little accident. But I could tell she didn't believe me. Even so, I didn't have the courage to tell Miss Brown or anyone else what was really happening. I had grown accustomed to living in silence and enduring the pain, even as the loneliness and despair drained me day by day. The home I once loved had become a foreign place, filled with shadows and deceit. I began to wonder if I would ever escape this life and find happiness again. Hope and salvation came to me on a day I never expected. Every day in that house felt like sinking deeper into a bottomless pit with no escape. Linda grew increasingly hostile, and my father completely ignored my silent cries for help. But the first glimmer of light appeared when Ms. Brown, my literature teacher, whose genuine concern I always felt, decided to intervene. One afternoon after class, she called me to stay behind. She looked me straight in the eye, her voice gentle yet firm. Emma, I can see you're not okay. The bruises on your hands, the silence in class, something is going on, and I need you to tell me the truth, she said. I couldn't bring myself to answer. I wanted to tell her everything, but I was terrified of Linda, of my father's accusations, and, most of all, of the possibility that no one could help me. I shook my head, hiding the tears streaming down my face, and left the room with a heavy heart. But Ms. Brown didn't stop there. The next day, she called my father to the school for a meeting. I sat in the principal's office, hands tightly clasped, trying to remain calm as my father walked in. Emma has told me that Linda has been harming her. I believe this is something we need to address seriously, Ms. Brown said, her concerned eyes glancing at me. My father immediately flew into a rage. Emma is lying. Linda hasn't done anything wrong. She's just trying to cause trouble, he snapped, his cold, piercing gaze directed at me. His words weighed heavily on me, extinguishing the faint hope that had just begun to spark. That night, back at home, my father berated me harshly. Linda stood by his side, her smug, triumphant smile unmistakable. Despair completely engulfed me, but deep down I knew I couldn't continue living like this. I needed someone who could save me from this nightmare, and the only person I could think of was my grandmother. Grandma Margaret, who had always shown me unconditional love and care. One evening while Linda and my father were busy in the living room, I quietly took my phone and called my grandmother. Hearing her warm voice on the other end of the line, I couldn't hold back my tears. "Grandma, it's me, Emma," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I need you, I can't stay here anymore." Grandma seemed to understand everything immediately. "Emma, don't worry, I'll be there tomorrow. Everything will be all right," she said, her voice resolute. For the first time in years, I felt like someone was truly on my side. The next day, as promised, Grandma arrived at our door. She was small with snow-white hair, but the strength in her eyes made me feel safer than I ever had. When she stepped into the house, my father looked surprised, and Linda stood with her arms crossed, her irritation evident. "Margaret, what are you doing here?" my father asked, suspicion dripping from his voice. Grandma didn't answer his question. Instead, she looked him straight in the eye, her sharp gaze cutting through all pretense. "John, I'm here to take Emma with me. She's not safe living here," she said firmly. My father laughed, but his laughter couldn't mask the nervousness behind it. "What are you talking about? Linda hasn't done anything. Emma is just trying to stir up trouble." Grandma didn't let him continue. "Emma called me. She needs help, and I won't stand by and let you or Linda hurt her any longer," she declared, her voice unyielding. Linda tried to intervene, her tone full of defiance. "Emma is exaggerating everything. You can't believe what a child says." But Grandma didn't let her intimidate her. "I don't need to explain anything to you, Linda. I know exactly what's been happening here. If either of you tries to stop me, I'll call the police." Both my father and Linda fell silent. Perhaps they hadn't expected Grandma to be so determined. I quickly packed my belongings, feeling Linda's angry eyes following my every move. As I stepped out of that house, I felt as though the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. No more hostile stares, no more cruel words, no more lingering pain. I was leaving hell behind, and heading towards safety. On the drive to Grandma's house, a sense of relief washed over me, one I hadn't felt in years. Grandma held my hand, speaking softly. "You're safe now, Emma. No one can hurt you anymore." Her words were like a healing balm, giving me hope that things would finally be okay. At Grandma's house, I found the love and warmth I thought I had lost forever. The days that followed were filled with healing, rediscovering peace, and slowly piecing myself back together. Grandma had pulled me from the darkest place, and for that, I would always be grateful. Independence and standing up for my rights became the ultimate journey that allowed me to close the door on a painful past and open a new chapter in my life. After moving in with Grandma Margaret, I experienced a sense of peace and safety that I had long thought impossible. Day by day in her home, I learned how to let go of old wounds and rediscover myself. She taught me how to be strong, how to face challenges with determination and confidence. Inside Emma, always remember, no one has the right to hurt you. You deserve happiness, she once told me. Those words became a guiding light in my life. But that happiness didn't last forever. Grandma passed away when I had just turned 21, leaving behind a void that was impossible to fill. On the day she left, I felt as though I had lost the last person who truly loved me unconditionally. However, I knew she wouldn't want me to dwell in sorrow. So, I reminded myself to stay strong, not only for myself, but also to protect everything she had worked so hard to build. Not long after her funeral, my father and Linda showed up at the house Grandma had left to me. I remember vividly how Linda walked in, her eyes scanning everything as if appraising the property. "Emma, Now that your grandmother has passed, this house should be put to better use. We could sell it and split the money, Linda said, her voice sickly sweet yet dripping with calculation. My father stood beside her, nodding in agreement. In the hallway outside, my home was gone. My father was shaking. "Oh, Emma, after all, I'm your grandmother's legal heir. You should hand over the keys and let us handle everything." I wasn't surprised by their words, but the anger that surged within me was undeniable. I had anticipated this, and thankfully Grandma had too. Before her passing, she left behind a clear will, declaring that the entire house and her assets were to go to me, her only trusted grandchild. "I think you're mistaken," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. Linda frowned. "What do you mean?" I placed a copy of the will on the table, ensuring they could read every word. "Grandma left everything to me. This is my house, not yours, and I won't let you touch it." Linda's expression immediately changed, shifting from surprise to rage. "Emma, you can't do this. Your father is her son. He has every right to decide," she yelled, her voice laced with fury. But I didn't waver. "Linda, I'm an adult. Legally, I have full control over this house, and I won't let you take it from me." At this point, my father tried a different approach, lowering his voice in an attempt to persuade me. "Emma, think about it. We're family. You can't be this selfish. Linda and I need a place to live too." I turned to look at him, recalling all the years he had failed me. "Family? You stopped being my family a long time ago. When I needed you most, you chose to turn your back on me. I've learned to live without your help, and I'll continue to do so," I said, my voice unwavering. Linda wasn't ready to give up. She kept pleading, trying to guilt me into giving in, but I was no longer the weak, timid girl I once was. Living with Grandma had taught me that no one had the right to force me to give up what was rightfully mine. "You have 1 week to leave, or I'll call the police for trespassing," I said, standing up and pointing toward the door. Linda looked like she wanted to argue further, but my father pulled her back, perhaps realizing that I meant every word. They left, with Linda glaring at me in anger and my father avoiding eye contact altogether. As the door closed behind them, I stood there in silence, feeling as if an enormous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. In the days that followed, I began restoring the house, transforming it into a fresh, welcoming space that honored the beautiful memories I had with Grandma while erasing the painful shadows of the past. I rehung her favorite paintings, planted more of the flowers she loved in the garden, and took the time to slow down and enjoy the freedom I had fought so hard to gain. You might say I'd become simple again, but there was a feeling I had only gotten the last 20 years, of returning to my own way of living. Reclaiming my rights wasn't just a legal victory, it was a pivotal moment in my life. It showed me that I could stand on my own, protect myself, and no longer depend on anyone else. From a girl who had been abandoned and hurt, I had grown into a strong, independent woman. I couldn't change the past, but I could control my future. And with Grandma's house as my foundation, I began building a new life. One filled with hope and purpose. During my journey toward independence, I gradually discovered the strength within myself. I learned how to care for myself, from small tasks like fixing a leaky faucet or repairing a broken chair, to larger responsibilities like managing finances and planning for the future. Each time I overcame a challenge, I felt stronger and more confident in my abilities. I was no longer the timid girl who trembled under Linda's cold gaze, or my father's harsh words. I was Emma, an independent, self-reliant woman in control of her life. My house slowly became more than just a place to live. It became a space where I truly enjoyed life. I began inviting friends over on weekends, something I had never dared to do while living with Linda and my father. The sound of laughter, the warmth of small, cozy gatherings in the kitchen where Grandma once cooked, brought new life into the house. It became more than a refuge, it was a source of happiness and hope. Even so, the shadows of the past occasionally found their way back. There were nights when I lay in bed, listening to the wind rustling through the trees outside, and memories of those cold, hostile days with Linda resurfaced. Those memories weren't easy to erase, but I learned to confront them rather than run from them. I realized that my past, as painful as it was, had shaped me into the person I am today. One afternoon, while tidying up Grandma's old bookshelf, I came across a letter she had left for me. Her handwriting was slightly shaky, but the warmth in her words was unmistakable. My dearest Emma, I know you're stronger than anyone could ever imagine. This house is yours, but more importantly, your happiness is something only you can create. Never let anyone or anything take away your right to live freely and joyfully. As I read those words, I couldn't hold back my tears. It wasn't just her parting message, it was a reminder of the value of freedom and independence. As time passed, I came to understand that standing up for myself wasn't just about keeping the house. It was about preserving my dignity, self-respect, and the right to live a fulfilling life. I began participating in community events, sharing my story with young people facing their own struggles. I wanted them to know that no matter how harsh life may seem, as long as we don't give up, we can always find the light at the end of the tunnel. My house is now more than a place to live, it's a symbol of triumph, of resilience in the face of adversity. Standing in the living room, with sunlight streaming through the windows, I feel a sense of peace and contentment filling my heart. I know I've overcome it all. I am no longer bound by the pain of my past, and above all, I know I've found myself. A strong, independent and free Emma. This story highlights the power of independence and resilience in protecting one's self-worth. Despite a past filled with pain and injustice, we can rise above it by confidently standing up, confronting our wounds, and asserting our rightful place. Love and support from those who genuinely care become the driving force that helps us heal and move forward. Most importantly, happiness and freedom are not gifts from others, but are built through our determination and self-respect. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Share your perspectives and feelings with us. Don't forget to follow our channel to explore more meaningful and inspiring stories about family, life, and overcoming adversity.